Hello. Welcome to Discover a New Future, a show geared at empowering women to be the best versions of themselves. I'm your host, Faith Saunders.
Desiree Kinney.
Welcome. Today we're going to be speaking about how we can actually help multicultural students to utilize on-campus resources to prepare themselves for the real world. My guest today is Wenylla Reid, who is the Associate Director of Employment Relations at Rutgers University. Welcome, Wenylla.
Oh, thank you.
Before we start our interview, I want to kind of just share some statistics. You know I'm kind of big on statistics, right? So one of the things that we found out was that there has been an increase in college enrollment by multicultural students, especially between 1996 and 2012. This is especially true for the Hispanic age students between ages 18 and 24. In fact, that has tripled 240% by 240% increase. Also, in terms of individuals of color, it's 72%, and individuals who are Caucasian, 12%. However, one of the things that these statistics also found was that although there has been an increase in the enrollment of multicultural students, the rate of graduation rate for these students has decreased. So, for example, in 2012, blacks or people of color made up 14% of college-age students, 18 to 24, yet just 9% graduated from university. So that's something we really need to address during this conversation.
Yeah, I think you make terrific points, Faith, and I also wanted to add the dimension of women versus men, because that's another level of statistics that we found were very intriguing. For postgraduate students, they found a 56% increase in females versus 36% for men. So that's another factor we'll be evaluating today.
Well, so let's get into it. So, Ms. Reid, could you share with us what your role is at Rutgers University as Associate Director of Employer Relations?
My official title is Associate Director for Employer Development. So what that means is that I work as a part of the Employer Relations unit, and we support all employers who come to campus with regards to the on-campus recruiting effort. You may or may not know, but various companies throughout the country have what we call on-campus recruiting programs. Sometimes they call them university relations programs. Sometimes they call them new graduate programs, essentially where they are targeting students who are enrolled in graduate as well as undergraduate programs. And they have specific opportunities entry-level opportunities geared towards that market. So my role is one, assisting employers in getting access to those students, as well as in educating them about the various opportunities to interface and connect with Rutgers students. And it's also going out and seeking out employers who may be able to benefit from the talent that we have at Rutgers University.
This is so awesome because it's so important for us to prepare students for the real world of work, because after college, yes, the real world starts. And, and I've been looking at some studies myself in the past, and one of the things that some employers are saying, depends on where you are in the country, it's that some students, although they may graduate from college, they may not be ready for the workforce. So it's great that we're going to be talking about how students can actually prepare themselves for the real world of work. But before we actually go there, why education? I'm kind of curious, why did you choose to pursue that?
Honestly, it was a roundabout sort of way. But to be quite honest, if you would have told me 20 years ago that this job existed, I wouldn't have believed you. But I've always wanted to be in education. Actually, when I graduated from undergrad, I took the praxis test. I was going to be a teacher, a social studies teacher at the high school level. And then after researching a bit further, I thought, okay, this is not really for me. I felt like high school was a little bit too rigid, a little too structured, a little too confining. Then I thought maybe I would go to graduate school, maybe get my PhD. But then I decided I wasn't ready to go to graduate school right away. And I wasn't really sure that there was anything that I was sufficiently passionate about where I would, devote the next 4 years of my life to studying, because I was just pretty much at that point all schooled out. So I did enter into the workforce. And I worked with high school students. It was one of my first major jobs as a youth developer with the Urban League. And I was educating these students about employment readiness. And it dawned on me at that time in my 21-year-old mind how, wow, if I would have prepared for my career, my job choices, the way these students were at high school, I would be ahead of the game because I didn't really start thinking critically about the job I wanted to do until it was close to graduation.
Right.
So when I encountered these students who are already focusing on things like interviewing skills, resume writing, job search strategies, I thought, wow, if I would have done that at 14, where these students were, I would be miles ahead at this point. And then I was able to network my way into a position working in university relations and college recruiting. And there again, that's where I saw the machine internally for the first time, where companies were actually creating strategic plans targeting undergraduate students. And then again, another light bulb went on and said, wow, if I had known that companies were really this serious about hiring graduates to the point they would devote resources and entire departments, entire teams to getting entry-level talent, again, I would have been ahead of the game. And so it was meeting students who are my age, who are very competitive, having multiple interviews, scheduling them for to come into our office, setting up flights for them or making hotel arrangements for them, setting up interviews internally with them. That's when I realized there was something here, and I immediately began to think I would love to educate students the way I did not receive that information or the way I wasn't educated. Because we did have career services at my office, and I went a few times, but I don't think I leveraged that experience to the greatest extent, right? And I finished up my master's degree, and then a position became available at Rutgers University at the business school at the time. My degree, incidentally, was, my undergrad was totally liberal arts, women's studies, Africana studies. My master's degree, however, was in management of technology because at the time I was working for a tech firm and they were willing to sponsor or pay for my graduate degree. So that's why I enrolled. And I learned a lot. That's where I got my business acumen from in that graduate program. So when I was ready to go into the business school, it was essentially creating a department. So that's what I spent approximately 8 years doing, building the department from the ground up. And it was the passion and the desire that I had to assist undergraduate students and impart to them some of the wisdom, the insight that I received over the years from the perspective of university relations and college recruiting, and also with the business acumen I acquired as a result of my graduate education where I was able to build a department. I spent 8 years there, and then I moved into employer development with the entire University Career Services Office. So instead of focusing solely on the business students, I've expanded my scope, and I'm now working not only with business student, but literally every other major within the university. So was my career path decided or determined? No, I had no idea. Even as an undergrad, I didn't even consider higher education as an occupation. I only thought it from the perspective of being a professor, not necessarily of the administrators that support the experience that college students have on campus.
Now, what would you say are your influencers, and what can you tell us a little bit about your background of what maybe impacted that path, and what were your motivators? What drove you to work with students and get to education? What did you have that aha moment, so to speak?
I think for me, the first aha moment was when I came into college. My family is Jamaican, so that's where I was born. So I'm first generation through and through. And when you are from a background like mine, there are essentially 3 or 4 occupations. You're going to be a doctor, a nurse, a lawyer, or engineer. And I did go into school thinking I wanted to be a doctor, but the coursework did not mesh. I wasn't enjoying it. I was doing really the best I could and still not yielding the results that I thought I should be achieving for the amount of effort I was exerting. And then the classes that I did see that I was doing really well in were my women's studies classes and my Africana studies classes, which were essentially part of our core curriculum. And so that's when I decided I was going to major in that. And my parents said, "What? You're going to major in studies? What is that?" So
I can hear them saying that now.
right, like, okay, what's the point of that? Exactly. So no one really understood it, and I didn't even understand it at the time, but I knew that's what I enjoyed. That made school interesting to me, right?
So I pursued your passion.
So I pursued something that was of interest to me, and then immediately school just became more fun. Just going to classes, my grades went up. It just became something that felt real to me. It felt that I was going there for a purpose. Even though people will tell you if you have a liberal arts degree, it doesn't necessarily tie into an occupation. However, what I feel that it does, it's very practical, even though it seems like the antithesis of practicality in terms of the job market. But if you go to school and you do study, let's say in my case, Africana studies and women's studies, it's essentially a study about myself. So it's a very practical major from that perspective. And what I do realize is during the pursuit of my major, you do acquire external skills, but it's developing the ability to articulate what those skills are. So it's research skills, it's writing skills, it's really contextualizing arguments, looking at things from different perspectives or different points of view to really yield a different result or explain a different outcome. It's historical analysis, it's gender analysis. There are a lot of things that go into it. So if I were to listen to, let's say, to everyone around me, I probably would have done something a little bit more practical in the traditional sense. But it was really listening to myself and honoring my own desires that really pushed me through. And then having these experiences that created these light bulb moments where I would have conversations with myself where it was really, wow, imagine if I received the information much earlier on. Or imagine if I could help college students. When you begin to think those thoughts, honestly, it sounds hokey, but opportunities do open up that align you with what it is that you're thinking about for yourself.
Now, you said a lot of very interesting things in terms of one, at 21 is very insightful. When you talked about realizing that if you had these resources, you could be way ahead of the game. So I think two things, lessons learned from what I'm hearing from you is that sometimes the experiences that we have, we can learn from them if we like them or not.
Exactly.
That's number one. And also sometimes follow your passion. Follow the path. Sometimes it's not clear in terms of what you want to do, but if you follow one door, when you go through that one, another one opens.
Absolutely.
So it's very important to really follow your passion because the money after a while doesn't count. And I think that's one thing that's very important for young people to really realize. So with that said, share with us what are some of the challenges that you may have seen in terms of some of our first generation students.
Or multicultural.
Multicultural, yeah.
I would say it's not unlike what I experienced, which is you're entering into college, right? First generation immigrant parents. My parents didn't have college degrees, or didn't go to college, so the idea that you even got in for them was a sign of success. It was like, yes, you made it, we got you there. But the reality, that's only the beginning of the experience. That's only the beginning of the struggle, because you go to school, but a degree is no longer sufficient. Maybe 20, 30 years ago, you could get a degree, you walk into a company, they would hire you, embed you into their management training program, give you 2 years of training, and you'd be good to go. Nowadays, it's a far more competitive market, so the degree is just the minimal requirement that you have. So part of the challenge is really shifting the mindset so that students understand that the degree isn't sufficient. But if you're coming from a perspective where you're not receiving that messaging, it could be well into your college education before you realize that there are other things that you have to do. So part of the challenge is getting them exposed to the idea that there are resources that are available and opportunities that are available to them that they have to pursue much earlier. Because many students wait until their senior year to start looking. Literally their senior semester, it's like, okay, now education is over, I must go on to the next level. But part of the way on-campus recruiting is structured right now, your job search is simultaneous with your academic education. So you're looking for a job, literally first semester freshman year, while you're acquiring your academic experience. The way you're looking for a job first semester freshman year is much different than what you'd be doing your senior year, but nonetheless, the process should begin at that time because you want to utilize those 8 semesters, give or take a few, or those 4 years that you have on campus to begin the search very early, to make mistakes, to learn what's appropriate, what's inappropriate, and to get connected with organizations who might be interested in hiring you.
Now, one of the biggest things we wanted to discuss is access. So why is there a lack of awareness for these first generation or multicultural students of what you're saying is available to them? And I know we'll get into some of the examples later, what Rutgers is offering, and we can share that definitely with the viewers later. But specifically, why do you think they aren't aware or they're not taking advantage of these amazing resources that can really help to propel their career paths? So
2 reasons primarily from my perspective. One is that they're not necessarily having the conversations with friends, family, or individuals within their immediate network who can educate and enlighten them to other career occupations besides engineering, medicine. They're not having those conversations, right? And in many cases, the parents are pursuing jobs or having to work jobs that they would never want their children in. So they're not necessarily having that conversation either. And in some cases, the parents may have those jobs without, let's say, a resume or without networking, at least in the way that we think about it. So they're not having those career conversations. The second part of it is, it could also be a matter of income and just awareness that there are resources generally in life that are available to you. And as a student, you're entitled to utilizing those resources, and you should absolutely seek them out. So if you don't have that mindset or that frame of mind going in, you literally miss, or sometimes you might feel as if it's an imposition to seek out a counselor or to seek out a career event or to talk to a professor who's actually there. That is their job. You feel as if you're invading their space and their time by going to their office hours. Or in many cases, you're not equipped, so you don't even know the language to use to engage that professor or to ask them questions or to ask for help. So it's a dual prong process where students, one, simply are not coming from an environment that encourages it, where they're not having those conversations, and two, in many cases they feel like accessing those resources is essentially an imposition.
That's so interesting that you said that, because I'm just kind of going back, kind of dating myself. But when I went to college here, university, I went to Baruch College in New York City, and no, I didn't even know. Looking back, I didn't know that any resources. All I knew that I had to work and I had to go to school and I had to get great grades.
Right. Exactly.
I didn't know what wasn't existing on campus. So I think the question I have, following upon based on what you said, because you can't tell someone something you don't know.
Right.
So
exactly.
as family members. So is there? Do you know of any ways that, in terms of educating families, in terms of what is, apart from the show, but what are some of the resources that are available?
One, I would suggest whatever school that you are considering for yourself or your child or an immediate loved one, go to their website and then peruse and browse. And essentially, there will be a page called resources. And you can take a look at what the student can access. So there's financial aid, there is career services, there is tutoring available, there is even counseling, there's medical services, all available to students. So when you think about it, you have to think about your person holistically. And that's how colleges tend to view students as holistic human beings who are not able to function, who are not able to study if they're not well, mind, body, financially, emotionally, or right now there's a big push towards career development and career readiness. So anything that you could think of that a whole human being would require, most colleges have resources in place to support them. So the first step is really to look to your school beyond major or beyond beyond acceptance. You have to look to them beyond how can they support my student or myself holistically based on where our needs are at the moment. And if you do decide to enroll in a particular school, they have orientations where they educate and expose students to the variety of resources that are available. So I encourage you to participate. And there are deans, there are administrators that you can reach out to ask that question. What resources are available for me to assist me in my career, to assist me with my health, to assist me with financial aid? Can you please point me in the right direction?
I have to say, and I'm going to put Wenylla on the spot, I also graduated from Rutgers Business School, and Wenylla was my mentor. So if I could give a life lesson, I would say find a mentor. When I went to the business school, it is that feeling, where do I go? What resources do I have? And you kind of, I came from a small town, so I looked at Rutgers, I was like, whoa, it's huge. There's buses to get to classes. But when I saw a powerful woman, told you I would put you on the spot, sitting there, and she was building the school. She had the business initiative I'd love for you to share with the viewers it's focused on women and advancing, and she would help critique your resume and give you interview tips and skills. And having someone you can relate to, I think, is one of the most powerful things. So I would say find a mentor. Whether it's on campus, whether it's a career advisor, find someone that you can have as that structure, that structured model for you. And it tremendously, thank you, Wenylla.
Thank you. And it's so funny, sometimes you have no idea, right?
Yeah,
but that's absolutely correct, because even with students, I'll go to events, I'll hand out my cards, I'll say, reach out to me. And for whatever reason, the reluctance to do so is overwhelming. And I really do think it's important that people do understand, if someone is saying, call me, contact me, reach out, even if it's just to say thank you so much, I appreciated the information that you shared with me, that's the beginning of a networking opportunity. That's the beginning of expanding your knowledge base and adding people who can be of service to you or to whom you can serve at some particular point in time. So you should definitely, as Desiree mentioned, reach out to individuals that can be of service to you.
And I kind of relate to that because I have young kids, also young adults, and I think part of this world with the technology nowadays, I think sometimes students lose that interpersonal piece in terms of realizing you can call someone and you speak to them. You know, it's not just about the texting, etc.
Real communication.
That's how you actually build relationships.
Exactly.
Because it's all about relationships. So that's a really important point. So, Wenylla, you started talking about, you know, how parents can actually assist their young adults who are planning on going to college in terms of navigating the system. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that?
I think it's important, one, for parents to encourage their student to begin the job search process very early. So it's, as I said before, it's as early as first semester freshman year. They should encourage their student to engage with the Career Services Office. Begin early and go as often as possible and explore the variety of opportunities that Career Services typically has to offer. And that's resume critique, that's counseling, that's information sessions where companies come on campus and give you an overview of who they are. That's career fairs. It's an online platform where students can upload their resumes and seek out job opportunities. So parents owe it to their students to encourage them to do that, to explore the resources Career Services has to offer. And parents, I think, also owe it to the students to give them an opportunity where possible to be true to themselves. Because oftentimes, the children do take the word of their parents very seriously, and in many cases when the parent is financing education, that is, it's paramount. And sometimes parents will threaten to defund students if they don't pursue a career or an education that the parent thinks is appropriate. And while I understand that perspective, I also think it's important for parents to really take a look at the desires of the child, the skills and capabilities of the child, and maybe come to a consensus about what is going to be appropriate. Because sometimes you may want that doctor, but one, the child has no interest, and two, they just may not have the mind or temperament for that particular occupation. And the other thing I want parents to understand is it's a myth to think that liberal arts students don't have career opportunities. There are many companies out there that will hire a liberal arts student, but the history major, the English major is not the only place that you get your college education. Encourage your student to be well-rounded on campus so that they're involved in a variety of activities where they develop skill sets such as leadership, such as interpersonal skills, such as communication skills, such as time management skills that they can showcase to employers during a conversation. And it's a combination of getting involved on campus and getting exposed to Career Services and ultimately being true to yourself, where that child will be able to flesh out the career pattern that is most, or career path that's most appropriate for them. There are many companies that I work with that don't care what you major in because their premise is, we will teach you what you need to know. Just make sure what it is that you do major in, you're performing exceedingly well in that space. So if you're doing well, especially in an area that's your major, they understand you're a good student, you're a good learner. So come and learn what it is that we have to teach you. So many times students are pursuing what their parents want them to pursue, and it's reflected in their performance because they're not performing at optimal level. They're performing subpar, and parents will push and say, well, you need to major in accounting because you're definitely going to get a job, but you have an average student. And if that's your major and you're performing at an average level, I as an employer, I'm not going to be impressed with that. I'm not going to want to hire average for my job when there's so many students who are above average. So help your student pick something where they can be above average in, and encourage them to supplement that academic education by becoming well-rounded using campus activity.
If what you're going to say?
Oh yeah, I was going to build off because I like the idea that you said for them to engage in activities or join organizations that teach them real-world skills. And Faith and I were actually talking before the show about how you can, in an everyday life, observe human behavior. So we were, for example, at a Starbucks, and we were saying, oh, well, you know what, you can have your child look at their customer service skills, how they build relationships, how they interact with people. So it doesn't necessarily, although there's tremendous resources available, you know, I would say first and foremost, use the on-campus resources, but the idea is every day, I think, you know, having the parent, having their child observe those behaviors and action so that they can actually nourish their child
Yeah.
into the individual they need to be. So I think that's interesting that you made that point, because it's anywhere and everywhere. They just have to take advantage of making that a learning experience for the
And I
child.
totally agree with you in terms of, because those are some of the soft skills,
Right.
you know. And the question I had for you that just came to my mind was, in terms of your relationships, going out to speak with employers, what are some of the things that employers are looking for? Because I think
Yes.
that's part of what
That's a
we are
good-
here to do, to prepare
that's a good life
students for
lesson.
that.
I would say a few years ago there was a survey, and it was conducted by asking hiring managers of MBA grads. It's going on, I don't know, at least a decade. And 86% of those hiring managers that hired MBAs at Fortune 500 companies responded that they found interpersonal skills. 86% of them said they found it very important. And in many cases, the push is always to be academically focused, 4.0. But I've talked to countless employers who say, if you have a 4.0 and that's all you have on your resume, you're not really the candidate for me. If you have a 4.0 and you are involved on campus in a variety of activities, then that is a well-rounded candidate. But it's very difficult for most people to pursue that. But we will say, most companies will want, let's say, a 3.0 minimum GPA. For really highly competitive positions, you're looking at a 3.5 and higher. When I say highly competitive, I mean positions where there are great demands. Typically, let's say, I will call it the banking space. There's a great demand. However, there are very few positions. So the easiest way to thin the candidate pool is to say we're going to get a really obscenely high GPA. But in addition to that high GPA, they want you to have skills. They want you to have interests. They want you to, let's say, scuba dive and salsa dance and be a leader on campus and have some demonstrated leadership, interpersonal, communication, time management, budget management skills. So there's so many different ways that you can do that. In addition, they want you to be involved in your community. So I know specifically at Rutgers, there are over 300 student organizations.
Wow.
So whatever piques your interest, you can find it at Rutgers University. And if it's not there, you have the option of creating it for yourself. So there's organizations that focus on service, that focus on politics, that focus on careers, that focus on items of leisure. So it's really up to you to seek out those areas that are of interest to you and embed yourself in the organization and become familiar. But typically companies will say, I want interpersonal skills, I want communication skills. They want analytical skills, critical thinking abilities, right? So if you're presented with a problem, how do you synthesize the information that you have available to come up with a viable solution for what's going on? Everything, they want go-getters, people who are going to do their best to figure it out, but yet have a sense of when it's appropriate to ask questions. They want likable people who aren't difficult to
their
work
culture.
with. Exactly. So they want individuals that are aligned with their values. So it's not always just about getting good grades. Good grades are only one part of the equation, but it's really utilizing the undergraduate experience to develop yourself holistically.
And I did want to point out, just being familiar with all the wonderful programs at Rutgers, some that are really concentrated toward those multicultural or first generation students. Can you tell us more about some, like the Women of Color reception, diverse reverse?
There's an organization at Rutgers, or there's a department, it's a student access. So student access and education equity, I believe it's called, or SAY. So. But if anyone needs more information, they can always reach out to me. And SAY hosted a Women of Color reception where they really gave the students an opportunity to just network and receive some guidance on what's appropriate or inappropriate with regards to, let's say, networking and connecting with professionals. Desiree was there, she was invited. There was also a Men of Color reception that followed a similar format.
See, we're not neglecting the men today.
Exactly, but in SAY, many of the students are first generation students, and within that organization, within that group, they have their own set of courses and programs designed to assist students who are first generation or who are from some of these historically underrepresented groups, because that's historically just how those numbers align, right? And there are supplemental resources that are in place. In addition, you have programs at Rutgers like WISO, West Indian Student Organization, Black Student Union, you have Latin American Student Organization, you have various cultural organizations that are in place to give students some of that support that they do need. You have various women's organizations on campus as well. In fact, when I was at the business school, I managed a program called the Women's Business Leadership at the time, and it was focused on targeting female business students enrolled in the business school and really have some structured opportunities for them to develop their leadership skills. And at Rutgers, there's also a program called Wings, Women Investing and Guiding, Investing in and Guiding Students, I believe, Wings. And it's geared towards women, with not just within the business school, but throughout the university campus. So there are a variety of programs that are available. So it's up to each individual student to do it. And in today's day and age, maybe when I was in school, I had an excuse, right? Computers and the internet were not as ubiquitous. But just go to your school's website, and it's just simply as doing a search on women, program for women, or programs for people of color, or resources are available, and things will pop up.
Wow, wow. You know, time.
Tremendous.
This is such wealth of information.
It's a lot of access.
That's a lot of information. What we'll do is kind of put some pointers as we go through the show when you actually you're watching this. So you know, time goes by when you're having fun.
Yeah, this is phenomenal.
But I still want to thank you, Wenylla, for actually coming in and give us such invaluable information. And I also want to thank you, Desiree, for being a part of this and actually bringing us all together again.
It's my pleasure.
Yes. So until next time, think positively. Thank you.